You're watching Private Matters, and I'm Max van Praag. My guest today is Barbara Musser, a woman whose business is called Sexy After Cancer, and she also wrote a book called Sexy After Cancer. She's a sex educator and a specialist in working with people, particularly women who've had cancer. Do I say this right?
Mm-hmm.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you.
Yes, and this is a very important topic on a show about intimacy and sexuality. Mm-hmm. People having cancer, and we could probably say that it's symbolic for anybody who suffers from a lack of health, like a serious lack of health, or any severe illness or severe depression or something that really interferes with their ability to have pleasure.
Right. Yeah, it's a huge field, really huge field, and I use cancer as the doorway in because that's my personal experience, and I know a lot about that, but it's also true of people with heart disease or diabetes, or, I mean, there are so many illnesses these days, and lots of people are touched by it.
You have had breast cancer?
Mm-hmm. I have.
Many years?
24 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you've been healthy and sexy?
Before, during, and after.
Yes.
Yes.
So when I was reflecting on the topic, I was wondering if sex can also be purposefully used to battle cancer, or if it can be used consciously. Okay, if I'm focusing on pleasure and something that's so life-affirming as sex, can it help me gain more grip on the situation?
It's a great question, and I think so. Maybe not so much during active treatment if a person is undergoing chemotherapy, because they may be feeling too ill, and that may be their focus, but that doesn't mean they can't have intimacy, which I think is really important. But I believe that our sexual energy is our life force energy, and that our life force energy can get sapped from us when we're undergoing especially cancer treatments, and particularly people who experience chemotherapy. Those drugs are designed to suppress our hormone production for both women and men, and that has a huge impact on our sexuality.
We just don't feel like it anymore.
Well, not only do we not feel like it anymore, but our bodies don't function in the same way as they do anymore, because when hormones are suppressed, it reduces the blood flow to our genital tissue. And a lot of the arousal cycle is all about blood flow.
Is that related to the impact of antidepressants on sex?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that antidepressants do affect libido, mm-hmm. And not only in terms of suppressing libido, but in terms of dulling people's sensation. But I don't know how that works. I don't know whether that's blood flow or whether that's the serotonin suppression.
So you're saying the problem is the medication and the treatment?
That's part of the problem. So for example, let's take a woman who has breast cancer and maybe she has her breasts removed. So first of all, she's had major surgery and there's wound recovery from that. And our breasts are such a symbol of what it is to be feminine, what it is to be sexy, and a source of pleasure for so many women, that there's that part itself that is huge. And then when you add to it the treatments, primarily, like I said, chemotherapy and also radiation, that suppress the hormone production, then what happens is our genital tissue dries up and it becomes friable, which means it's very delicate and tears really easily. And so sex play with our genitals can become really painful, and a lot of people shy away from that. So and also hormones have a lot to do with our libido, which is the urge to be sexual. So when you add all that together, it's a huge trauma to who we are as a person. And then many women and men who undergo cancer treatments dissociate physically from their body as a way of coping with all this that's going on, and they don't even know they're not in their body. So it's also hard to have sex when you're not in your body.
Right, but now, as we know, or as I believe, the function of the woman in the life of a man is often to bring him into his body and to help him connect with the earth and with himself and with his vitality and his sexuality. That's a function of, that's something that women do.
Right.
So if we have, for example, a man who is in bed with cancer and you bring in a prostitute, have you done that or tried that, or what would happen? Would he not respond? Would he not have a response to that? Or
depends on his type of cancer. So men with prostate cancer who've had surgery, oftentimes they have a lot of peripheral nerve damage, and so their penis just doesn't get erect. And it's not only the nerve damage, but if they have chemotherapy and their hormones are suppressed, they're not getting that natural blood flow to their penis. And a healthy man has 4 to 6 erections during the day, just as part of the way that his body functions. And he may not even be aware of some of those. When there's that peripheral nerve damage, that doesn't happen. And so if a man doesn't have some kind of stimulation, whether that's with a prostitute or manually or with some of those vacuum devices that are available, within a fairly short period of time after his surgery and treatment, their scar tissue forms in the penis and he's not able to get erections.
So the nerve tissue is the original problem, you said? The nerve?
If there is peripheral nerve damage around...
Through the cancer?
Through the surgeries.
I see.
Through the radiation, yes.
And what do you say, if his penis doesn't work for a while, then it kind of does...
Yeah, I don't know what the exact amount of time is. I was talking with somebody about this just last week. And what she was saying was that it's important within about 6 to 8 weeks after a man has his surgery and treatment to begin some kind of penis rehabilitation. And if it doesn't happen then, because we want to manually stimulate the blood flow in and out of the penis, that scar tissue forms inside the penis, then he's not able to get erections. So,
and scar tissue forms because it's not...
Because there's no blood flow. I think it just atrophies.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's...
It's very serious. With women, when they have atrophy in their vaginal tissue, it can be rehabilitated over time. It's not the same with men.
Well, it's clear from all the teachers, tantric teachers, Taoist teachers, that the way to have better sex and to feel sexy is to actually touch your own genitals.
Right.
Women to go to the bathroom during work and massage their breasts, or
right.
Masturbate, and for men to massage their testicles and
yep.
to really touch
right.
is very important. And Mantak Chia, you know who he is, Taoist master who teaches how to transform sexual energy, and has done a lot of brought great information to the West about sexual practices. He says in a very funny way that Americans are so concerned with going to the gym and working on their body and looking sexy.
Right.
But that's not the real sexy.
Right.
The real sexy is the genitals and touching those and letting the sexual energy actually, focusing on the sexual energy. It's not about muscles or being fit necessarily.
Well, that's right. Although having strong muscles and being fit helps the blood flow, which is a whole big part about why we want to focus on the genitals. Because it's the blood flow that stimulates those really great feelings. So it all links in together. So when we work with couples, we talk a lot about genital massage for both men and women.
And when you say we?
My partner and I, he works with me in my work with couples.
You coach and counsel people together?
Mm-hmm. We coach and counsel people together. We lead weekend retreats together. We just had a weekend retreat for couples. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he also has had cancer, so he brings that sensitivity to it as well.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Sexy After Cancer is the title of your book,
mm-hmm.
which you wrote
last year.
Last year.
Mm-hmm.
And you are becoming a leading voice in this field.
Yes.
You're being invited to conferences to speak about this stuff because there's not a lot of information about it? Or?
Because nobody's talking about it.
Nobody's talking
about it.
Except you.
Right. So here's the interesting thing that I found is that doctors, when I talk to doctors, they say, oh, I don't have time to talk to my patients about it. And I think that's code for I'm not comfortable talking with my patients about it, because in their medical training, they're not trained about human sexuality. And they also say that if the patient asks, I'll respond. But many times the patients, because they haven't been told, they don't know that one of the side effects of the treatments is going to be sexual problems. And then the patients don't think to ask because they don't know it's coming, or a lot of women are embarrassed, especially if it's with a male doctor. You know, we have a lot of taboos
Sure.
in this culture about talking about our sexuality. So it's this whole area that nobody's talking about. And yet, I mean, the statistics are pretty shocking that 40 to 90% of women who undergo cancer treatments have sexual problems, and 20 years after treatment, half of them still do. And I think it's similar for men.
Are these people still taking medication?
Some.
Is that the main reason?
No, I think here's what I think happens. I see this cycle where all of a sudden a woman is going through chemotherapy, or her hair is falling out, she's nauseous, she's just surviving, just getting through the treatment. So the sex is the last thing on her mind, at least intercourse. And her partner, if she has a partner, doesn't want to hurt her, doesn't want to upset her, doesn't want to impose his needs on her, so he doesn't ask, and they just start to grow apart. And so then, after treatment ends, she may agree, okay, I'll try this because I'm starting to feel better now, and because it's been so long and there's this residual damage from the hormone suppression and the lack of blood flow, it hurts. Mm-hmm. So when you think that intercourse is going to be painful, you can't relax and open to receive, and so you're less likely to do it. And so many people that I talk with have just said, well, my sex life wasn't that great before, now it's a real ordeal, I'll just let it go. Which is really sad and unnecessary.
You teach people in sessions, in workshops, and you've shown me you use a fake vagina.
Right.
Maybe we have the vagina on set, please. Thank you. So what do we have here?
So this is a vulva puppet. And you can touch it. It's very soft.
Yes.
Just like a woman.
Very nicely made.
Made
Did you
of
make
velvet.
it yourself?
No, I didn't. So it's just a representation of, these are the outer vulva, these are the inner lips, this is the clitoral hood and the clitoris, and this is the G-spot inside. And what I use this for is to show women how they can actually rehabilitate their vaginal tissue. It's called the Vaginal Renewal Program, and it really works. And just this last weekend, I was saying I had this retreat, and I had a couple of clients who were attending this retreat, and the women wanted to be the poster children for that this program really works. And it's a combination of three things. It's moisturizing the tissue with a moisturizing lubricant. It's external massage, like, give me your hand like this. It's like this, to move the blood and lymph all through the vulva and the perineal tissue. And then the third part is to use a wand that vibrates internally for massage to do that same thing inside. So over the period of weeks, when they do that every day, what they do is they're restoring the moisture to the tissue, they're increasing the flow of the fluids and the blood manually, they're stretching the vaginal tissue so that when they are ready to have a toy or a penis or something inserted vaginally, they can do that without so much pain.
Wow. And for the men?
For the men, well,
Yeah.
I don't have a penis puppet. Would you like to demonstrate? For the men, there's two things. One is I teach pelvic massage, and there's some really great videos out about that. Joseph Kramer's Fire on the Mountain.
Are you talking about the perineum?
I'm talking about the perineum. I'm talking about the penis, the scrotum, the upper thighs, the whole pelvic area for men.
Yes.
That there's a lot of different things that you can do to massage and bring pleasure to those areas. So that's all not only feeling good, but it's also increasing blood flow. So there's that part. There's also there are vacuum devices that you can put over your penis that are designed to stimulate the penis, to stimulate the blood flow. And then the third part of it is to use a low dose of Cialis or Viagra or Levitra, one of those products, because they also stimulate the blood flow. And just a low dose just to get the blood flowing. So those are the steps with men. And it's really fun for partners to massage each other. I mean, my partner and I did this vaginal renewal program, and at the same time I was giving him the goodies of giving him some massage. And it's very, very satisfying and a good interim step until we were at the point where we wanted to resume intercourse.
Mm-hmm. And you think you have been able to completely reestablish your
and it also helps for women who are menopausal, because they experience that same kind of tissue dryness because their hormone production stops. And if a woman is menopausal, it can happen for a couple of reasons. One is just a part of her evolution and aging process.
Mm-hmm.
One is it can happen as a result of these drugs, these chemotherapy drugs, or it can happen surgically. So I had a woman in this retreat this last weekend who had her ovaries removed as a way of suppressing any kind of hormone production. She still had her uterus, but as a result of the ovaries and no estrogen production, she was experiencing menopause and also osteoporosis. So using this program can really help her as well.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have to stop having sex just because we stop menstruating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we don't have to stop having sex for men if our penis doesn't work in the same way.
This is really your passion, to work with people who have an illness.
Yeah. Well, yes, because nobody's doing it, and it's such a large group of people, and I think that anybody who has the intention and is still here in their body, they have the possibility to have a happy, healthy, and satisfying, intimate, and sexual life. They just don't know how. Nobody's taught them.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the other thing I'm passionate about is I have to constantly research new things so that I can teach people, so I'm having a lot of fun.
And a lot of the things that you're teaching and learning are applied in any situation.
Absolutely.
They're not specific for
That's
people,
right.
People have cancer.
That's right.
And do people come to you who have other problems or diseases?
Mm-hmm. And people come to me who don't have any diseases because they want help with their sexuality.
But they have a sexless marriage?
They might have a sexless marriage. It might have been a long time that they've been single and haven't had intercourse, and they don't quite know how to do that. I was talking just this morning on the phone with a man whose wife died from cancer after a 30-year marriage, and suddenly he's single and wants to start dating again, and it's a whole different world than 30 years ago. So helping him get back in the scene and be able to interpret the signals that we give to each other, because it's different now than it was 30 years ago.
For example?
For example, he felt that there was someone that he met at his church who he thought was really beautiful and really radiant, and he was interested, and he approached her, and she was very open to him and very friendly and offered him a hug, and he thought that she was coming on to him. And when he asked her if she was available for dating, she said no, she was dating someone else and she wasn't really available. And he thought, well, I don't know how to read these cues anymore. So it's a little different. Yeah. So people like that. I've also worked with a lot of people with heart disease and some people with diabetes. And I have worked with one person who has multiple sclerosis. Oh, and somebody who has cerebral palsy.
What are some other remedies besides the touching that you prescribe or that you advise for people to increase their libido?
Well, I think that there are a lot of different aspects to libido than just our body. Yes, I agree with what Mantak Chia says, that's where it all happens. But there are emotional components, there are spiritual components, there are psychological components. So I almost always start with somebody falling in love with themselves again. Because most people, particularly that example I was giving a few minutes ago about a woman who's had her breasts removed and isn't feeling very feminine, she may not love herself so much anymore. She may feel like so-called damaged goods. And so there are practices to reconnect with herself and learn what it is to her to feel. because we've got this association in our culture with our tits, right? They're used to sell products, they're used for all kinds of things, and it's all about sex. Well, if you don't have those, then how do you define what sexy is to you? And so we look at what all that really is, and talk about people that they may find sexy, and what is it that makes them sexy, and what are those qualities that you have in yourself. So there's that whole piece, because if you feel like you're sexy, or you know you're sexy, that's what you project, right? So there's that whole piece of it. There's oftentimes a forgiveness piece to do, because people need to forgive their body for betraying them in some way, or they need to forgive their doctor for changing their body, or they need to forgive God if they're angry at God for giving them this condition, whatever it is. And they need to forgive themselves for being human. So there's a big piece of that, because all those kinds of things are like walls that we put around ourselves to protect ourselves from the pain, but they also keep other people out. And it also affects like I was saying earlier, our life force energy. I also teach people how to come back into their body. And a lot of that happens with sensate focus. You familiar with what that is? So it's giving people things to focus on in their body to come back in before they want to attempt intercourse.
Well, that could be a whole new way of being sexual.
Yeah.
Is to not so focus on what's happening out there and what the other person looks like, or what they do for you.
Right.
But to really going inside and getting in touch with very subtle sensations.
It totally is. And when you look at the amount of time that we spend in sex play, and how much of that time is about the orgasm, it's a very small part of it. So when we focus on the orgasm, or thinking that that's what needs to happen, we lose the whole rest of the journey. And I think the journey is really, really interesting. So for example, just think about when you first started kissing and how hot that was. How much the energy flowed through your body, how hot it felt in your cheeks, in your chest, and how big that energy felt, and that you didn't know what else to do, but you wanted more, but you didn't know what it was, but this was enough, and you didn't ever want it to stop. I mean, that's fantastic, really fantastic. But we forget about that as we move on to other things. And it's also about using our mind as our biggest sex organ. You know, and using that, whether it's creating fantasies, or whether it's reading or writing erotica, or talking sexy to somebody.
Or role play.
Or role playing, yeah.
It's a very important expression of sexuality.
Absolutely.
Role playing.
Yeah. In this retreat we just did, we gave people an opportunity to share some fantasies with each other.
Yes.
And gave an example of one, and then just said, go, do it. And only you can decide whether you ever want to act out those fantasies or not. Because sometimes they're best left as fantasy. Sometimes it's really fun to act them out. So when I shared my fantasy with them, they said, well, did you do it? I said, I'm not going to tell you. That's not the point. So that's...
The point is not to do it.
The point is not whether I did it or not. When I shared my fantasy, it was really about the fantasy.
Yes.
And what that inspires in you, and what that excites in you, and what that gets flowing in you.
Indeed, even if it's something that's considered very perverted or very sick.
Right.
Somebody may have a fantasy about incest.
Right, lots of women have rape fantasies. You ever want to act that out? Probably not.
The same with incest.
Yep.
And there's a place for all of that that's healthy.
Right.
That's really healthy.
Right. And learning how to set a scene, to have an agreement with your partner about something that you're going to do. And maybe you set the stage, maybe you wear certain clothes, maybe you play certain music. All of that is all a part of it, because when we stimulate all of our senses, that arouses us more. Yeah.
Well, this is a very rich topic today, like sexy after cancer. In the framework of private matters, very, very important. We've not talked about this.
Right.
So I'm really glad you're here. And people can find you on your website, sexyaftercancer.com.
Right.
And how else that's where your workshops and everything's listed?
Everything's there. I have a Facebook page called Sexy After Cancer. I'm on Twitter as Sexy After Cancer. People can call me if they want to. My phone number's on the website. Yeah. And I also write articles. I'm a regular columnist in a magazine on the East Coast called The Pink Paper. And I'm a weekly blogger. I write a column called Sexy Saturdays that's posted on the Pink Fund blog. And I blog on my site too. So yeah, lots of ways to find me.
A really great niche, yeah. Barbara Musser, thank you for coming on Private Matters. And we'll be back with other topics next time. Thank you for watching our show, privatematters.com, where you'll find information about any aspect of intimacy. And we talk with people from all around the world. Thank you for watching.
Si vos escrevem, no está a escrever. Si vos esquecem, não está a esquecer. Até o dia que vou voltar. Si vos escrevem, não está a escrever. Si vos esquecem, não está a esquecer. Até o dia que vou voltar.